The swarm descended upon Earth like a black plague, an endless tide of chitinous bodies that darkened the skies. Insectoid monstrosities poured from organic dropships, flooding into cities and leaving utter devastation in their wake. Militaries crumbled, defenses failed, civilians ran. Chaos reigned as the alien invaders rampaged unchecked. Hive-minded soldiers moved with perfect coordination, their compound eyes gleaming with malevolent purpose. Razor-sharp talons ripped through armor like tissue paper. Molecular acid sprays melted rock and bone. Unearthly screeches pierced the air, paralyzing soldiers with primal dread. Humanity fled in abject terror before the unstoppable onslaught, but one force dared to stand against the tide of chitin and death. The human Marines. Grizzled veteran Sergeant Derek Thorne Reyes planted his armored boots on the war-torn streets of New York City. His grim eyes surveyed the hellscape, taking in smoldering ruins and skittering swarms. Thorne had stared down death on 100 worlds. He'd sent countless Xenos to whatever passed for their afterlife. This was no different. Marines, dig in and prepare for combat. No retreat, no surrender. We hold the line. His battalion of elite soldiers, encased in bleeding-edge power armor and wielding advanced weapons, took up defensive positions. They were humanity's finest. Unbreakable warriors forged in the crucible of unending conflict. Each had sacrificed more than could ever be counted, all in service of their species. Now they would sacrifice everything. Thorne's finger tightened on the trigger of his plasma rifle. Let's show these uglies what it means to fight humans. Hell swarmed toward them, a surging tide of ravenous monsters, and the Marines opened fire. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, but the human Marines would hold the line, to the last man if needed. Even if it cost them their lives, they would stand. The plasma rifle kicked against Thorne's shoulder, spitting luminous death into the chittering horde. Insectoid bodies burst like rotten fruit, spraying ichor and shattered chitin. His Marines poured disciplined fire into the swarm, a blistering fusillade that reaped a gruesome toll. Yet for every alien felled, a dozen more surged forward, trampling their fallen kin in their frenzy to rend human flesh. Thorne's comm crackled. "Sarge! Incoming transmission from—" Static drowned the operator's words. "It's Ilara!" Thorne's blood ran cold. Ilara, his estranged wife, the brilliant xenobiologist. What daring plan had she— "Thorne!" Ilara's voice ragged with fear. "The swarm, it's only the beginning. The Sovereign Accord, they're behind this. They want to—" The transmission dissolved into garbled chaos. Dread coiled in Thorne's gut. The Sovereign Accord. That shadowy cabal of Xenos, their names spoken only in whispers. What dark design had they unleashed? A fresh wave of horrors crested the tide of battle. Towering siege beasts lumbered forth on columnar legs, great-fanged maws dripping molecular acid. Armor-shredding grav lances stabbed from their carapaces, eviscerating Marines too slow to seek cover. Thorne ducked behind the rusted bulk of a derelict APC. "Rockets up! Target those!" Shimmering portals yawned wide. Lithe figures stormed from the riftways, encased in crystalline armor that refracted the hellish light. They moved with preternatural grace, dancing between plasma bolts and scything down the aliens with blades that sang with killing harmonics. "Zephyrians!" Thorne stared in disbelief as the alien warriors tore into the swarm like vengeful demigods. One turned to him, eyes glowing behind an ornate crystalline helm. "Sergeant Reyes, I am Commander Zara Vex. We come to aid your stand against the fell machinations of the Accord." Thorne met the alien's gaze. "What do they want?" "The Forge of Worlds," Zara intoned, "an ancient device of unfathomable power. With it, the Accord could reshape the very fabric of the cosmos to their twisted designs. Entire civilizations would be unmade, whole worlds shackled to their will." Cold fury ignited in Thorne's veins. "Not on my watch." Zara raised her singing blade in salute. "Your courage is a beacon in this darkest night, Sergeant. Together, we shall stem this tide of damnation." Thorne lifted his rifle, a savage grin splitting his battle-scarred face. Bolstered by their enigmatic allies, The Marines surged to meet the next wave, hearts pounding with the drumbeat of war. The battle raged with redoubled savagery. Marines and Zephyrians fought shoulder to shoulder, a living bulwark against the chitinous tide. Thorn lost himself in the primal rhythms of combat, his rifle an extension of his will, reaping a bloody tally. Yet even as they held the line, doubt gnawed at him. How could they hope to triumph against a force that commanded such unfathomable power? How many of his Marines would he have to sacrifice upon the altar of this impossible war? In a brief lull amidst the chaos, Thorn turned to his most trusted lieutenant. "Kovac, if I fall—" "You won't," Axel clasped his shoulder, eyes fierce behind his visor. "We're in this together, Sarge, till the end." Emotion constricted Thorn's throat. He could only manage a terse nod. Then Raven's voice crackled over the comm. "Sarge, I've cracked their encryption. The Accord, they're holed up on the Swarm's homeworld, some kind of command nexus. If we can knock it out—" Thorn's mind raced. A desperate plan, a fool's gambit. But what choice remained? He keyed his comm. "Kovac, I'm taking a strike team to the staging ground. We sever their command, cut off the head of the snake. You and the Zephyrians hold the line here." Axel nodded grimly. "Give 'em hell, Sarge." Thorn gathered his most hardened veterans, those who had stared into the jaws of oblivion and spat defiance. They'd all made their peace, one last ride into the very maw of the abyss. As the strike team boarded the dropship, Thorn paused to look back at the hellscape of Earth. The swarm seethed across the ravaged cityscape, an endless tide of nightmare made flesh. Yet amidst that charnel ruin, his Marines and their Zephyrian allies fought on, the thunder of their weapons a defiant anthem against the dark. "For Earth," Thorn whispered, "for the lost, for the fallen." He turned to board the ship, soul armored in iron dedication. One way or another, this ended today. The dropship's engines roared as Thorn and his strike team rocketed away from Earth's ravaged surface. Through the viewport, the sergeant caught a final glimpse of the battle raging below, a sea of chitinous bodies surging against the defiant line of Marines and Zephyrians. "Kovac, Hardwick, gear check!" Thorn barked, tearing his gaze from the hellscape. His most trusted veterans nodded, their hands moving with practiced efficiency over plasma rifles and combat webbing. A crystalline chime rang out as Corporal Zephyr Vex, their Zephyrian ally, adjusted the harmonics of her singing blade. Her alien features were inscrutable behind her ornate helm, but Thorn sensed the same iron grit that burned in his own veins. The ship's comm crackled. "Sergeant Reyes, this is Ambassador Lyra Saren, requesting permission to come aboard." Thorn's brow furrowed. "Granted. What's this about, Ambassador?" The airlock cycled, admitting a tall, willowy figure. Ambassador Saren's silver eyes gleamed with intelligence as she strode onto the bridge. "I bring critical intelligence on the Sovereign Accord, Sergeant, and an offer of aid from the Galactic Council." Thorn listened intently as Lyra outlined the Accord's activities and the Council's divided stance, his expression resolute at the revelation of sympathizers within the galactic governing body. "We appreciate the intel, Ambassador," Thorn said, his voice gruff. "But why are you here personally?" Lyra's gaze met his unflinchingly. "Because some battles can't be fought from behind a desk, Sergeant. I'm coming with you." The stealth ship sliced through the void, its destination the swarm's homeworld of Nyx. In the cramped quarters, tension simmered. Thorn found himself in the galley, staring into the depths of a lukewarm coffee. "Heavy is the head that wears the command, eh, Sergeant?" He looked up to find Lyra watching him, her silver eyes softened with understanding. Thorn's weathered face creased in a mirthless smile. "That obvious?" "To those who've borne similar burdens." Lyra settled across from him. "You carry the weight of Earth on your shoulders. It's a crushing load." Thorn's grip tightened on his mug. "Not just Earth, Ilara, my wife. She tried to warn me about all this. Now she's out there somewhere, maybe." He couldn't finish the thought. Lyra's hand found his, a gesture of solidarity across the gulf of their species. "We'll find her, Sergeant, and we'll stop the Accord. But first, you need to forgive yourself." Before Thorn could respond, alarms blared. Raven's voice crackled over the ship's comm. "Sarge, we've picked up a distress signal. Zephyrian ship under attack." They found the battered recon vessel adrift in the inky void. Its hull bore scars of weapons far beyond any they'd encountered. A lone survivor stumbled from the wreckage. Arya Vex, sister to their Zephyrian ally Zara. Arya's eyes blazed with psionic energy as she recounted the attack. "New breed of swarm. Faster, smarter. They're evolving." Thorne's gut clenched. If the monsters on Earth were but the vanguard. Nyx loomed before them, a nightmare realm of jagged obsidian and roiling storm clouds. As they made planetfall, the team moved with grim purpose. Each step brought them closer to the heart of the swarm, to the Sovereign Accord's staging ground. They fought through waves of chittering horrors, Thorne's plasma rifle reaping a bloody tally. Raven's tech wizardry short-circuited the alien's hivelink. Zephyr's singing blade carved glowing arcs through chitin and flesh. Arya's psionic blast shattered minds and bodies alike. In the lull between skirmishes, they discovered ancient ruins, eldritch structures that pulsed with otherworldly energy. Lyra's eyes widened as she deciphered fragments of alien script. The Forge of Worlds. It's tied to the swarm somehow, a symbiosis. A bone-chilling screech split the air. Thorne spun, rifle raised, as shadows detached themselves from the ruins. Sovereign Accord troopers, their armor gleaming with malevolent purpose. "Ambush!" Thorne roared. "Take cover!" The air filled with sizzling plasma bolts and the screaming harmonics of Zephyrian blades. Thorne dove behind a fallen pillar, returning fire. He caught glimpses of his team through the chaos. Raven laying down suppressing fire, Zephyr locked in a deadly dance with an Accord Blade Master. A hulking figure strode through the melee, cybernetic implants glinting, its gaze locked onto Thorne, promising death. "Draxus," Thorne snarled, recognizing the Accord commander from intel briefings. What followed was a brutal clash of flesh against metal, human drive against alien cunning. Thorne's armor cracked under Draxus's cybernetically enhanced blows. The sergeant's own strikes found purchase, denting the Accord leader's sleek carapace. Draxus' augmented fist smashed into Thorne's chest, sending him sprawling. The alien loomed over him, energy blade humming to life. "You've lost, human." A blast of psionic energy slammed into Draxus, staggering the hulking alien. Arya stood there, eyes blazing with ethereal fire. "Not while we draw breath." Thorne seized the opening, driving his combat knife deep into a gap in Draxus's armor. The Accord commander fell, dark ichor seeping from the wound. As the dust settled, Thorne surveyed his battered team. They'd survived, but at a cost, and the true test still lay ahead. "The staging ground can't be far," Lyra said, studying a holographic map. "But these energy readings, the Accord may already be tapping into the Forge's power." Thorne's face hardened in a hard line. He checked his rifle's charge, each movement speaking of grim purpose. "Then we'd better move fast. Whatever happens next, we finish this. For Earth. For all of us." With a nod to his team, Sergeant Reyes led the way deeper into the heart of Nyx. The air thrummed with alien energies, the very fabric of reality seeming to warp around them. Whatever monstrosities the Sovereign Accord had unleashed, whatever power they sought to harness, Thorne and his strike team would meet it head-on. The fate of galaxies hung in the balance, and these warriors, human, Zephyrian, and more, stood as the last, desperate hope against the coming storm. The team emerged from a twisting organic tunnel into a vast chamber. Thorne's breath caught in his throat. Towering structures of living tissue pulsed with sickly bioluminescence, casting an eerie glow across the alien landscape. "By the Emperor," Hardwick whispered, his plasma rifle trembling in his grip. Raven's eyes darted across her sensor readouts. "Sarge, I'm picking up massive energy signatures from that central spire. It's off the charts." Thorne nodded grimly. "That's our target. Move out, stay low." They crept forward, skirting pools of bubbling biomatter. The air hummed with an otherworldly resonance that set teeth on edge and made skin crawl. Zephyr's crystalline armor refracted the unholy light, casting prismatic patterns across the organ-like walls. A piercing shriek split the air. Thorn whirled, rifle raised, as a nightmarish figure descended from above. It was a hulking mass of chitin and cybernetics, eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. "Incoming!" Thorn roared. The team scattered as a wave of smaller creatures swarmed from hidden recesses. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, but seemed to dissipate harmlessly against the commander's armored hide. Lyra's voice rang out, "Our weapons are ineffective!" Thorn gritted his teeth, searching for a weakness. "Fall back! Defensive formation!" They retreated, desperately fending off the relentless swarm. Zephyr's singing blade carved through lesser creatures, but even its killing harmonics barely scratched the commander's carapace. Suddenly, Arya stumbled, clutching her head. Her eyes blazed with psionic fire. I can feel them. So many minds." With a scream of rage and pain, she unleashed a wave of psychic energy. It slammed into the swarm commander, cracking its armor and sending it reeling. "Now!" Thorn shouted. "Push forward!" They surged ahead, capitalizing on the momentary advantage. The commander retreated, its swarm minions covering its withdrawal. Panting, they regrouped at the base of the central spire. Raven's fingers flew across her hollow interface. "I'm detecting multiple security systems. Give me a minute." "Make it quick," Thorn growled, scanning for threats. With a hiss of released pressure, a portal irised open in the spire's surface. They plunged into a maze of twisting biomechanical corridors. At every turn, they faced waves of increasingly deadly swarm creatures. Hardwick went down, his armor melted by a gout of molecular acid. Zephyr's blade flashed, decapitating the beast responsible. "Keep moving," Thorn urged, half carrying his wounded comrade. They fought their way deeper, Raven's expertise bypassing alien firewalls and psionic wards. Finally, they reached the spire's core, a vast chamber dominated by a pulsing, crystalline structure. Arya gasped, her face contorted in anguish. "The hive mind, it's not one consciousness. It's millions, billions, all those minds trapped." Lyra's eyes widened in horror. "The Accord, they've enslaved entire species." A familiar presence brushed Arya's mind. "Zara, sister!" Thorn's tactical mind raced, assessing their dire situation. "Raven, what are we looking at?" The tech specialist's face was grim. "It's worse than we thought, Sarge. They've activated the forge. I'm seeing energy signatures consistent with massive swarm incubation. Planet killer class." "How long?" Thorn demanded. "Minutes, maybe less." Thorn's lips pursed. He turned to Arya, whose eyes still blazed with psychic fire. "Can you disrupt the hive mind? Buy us some time?" Arya nodded, her voice strained. I think so, but Zara's essence is intertwined with it. If I overload the matrix..." Understanding passed between them. Another impossible choice in a war full of them. "Do it," Thorn ordered. He turned to Raven. "Hit their control systems. We'll..." A bone-rattling roar cut him off. The swarm commander had returned, leading an army of chittering horrors. Thorn raised his rifle, tenacity etched in every line of his battle-scarred face. "Hold the line. Give them the time they need." The chamber erupted into chaos as the final battle began. Thorn's voice cut through the din. "Arya, we need that disruption now." Arya's eyes met his, a silent understanding passing between them. She nodded, her face a mask of unshakable focus. "I'll do it. For Zara. For all of us." As Raven's fingers flew across her hollow interface, initiating the system overload, Arya closed her eyes. The air around her crackled with psionic energy. Her connection to Zara's essence trembled, then shattered. A scream tore from Arya's throat, raw and primal. The sound reverberated through the chamber, setting teeth on edge and sending shivers down spines. Waves of psychic force pulsed outward, slamming into the crystalline structure at the heart of the hive mind. The swarm commander staggered, its movements becoming erratic. Lesser creatures fell, writhing in apparent agony. Thorn watched in awe as cracks spiderwebbed across the pulsing crystal, spreading rapidly. It's working, Lyra shouted over the din. But their victory was short-lived. A deep, bone-rattling rumble shook the chamber. Warning klaxons blared to life. Raven's eyes widened in horror. Sarge, we've got a problem. The facility's going into some kind of meltdown. Thorne's mind raced. Evac now! Move it, people! They scrambled towards the exit, but a deafening crack split the air. Massive chunks of biomechanical architecture crashed down, blocking their path. Damn it! Thorne snarled, scanning for alternatives. Anyone got eyes on another way out? Kovach's gravelly voice cut through the chaos. There! Emergency transport hub, sub-level 3. They plunged deeper into the crumbling facility, the sounds of destruction nipping at their heels. Disoriented swarm creatures lurched from shadows and crevices, lashing out in blind panic. Zephyr's singing blade flashed, carving a path through the chitinous masses. Hardwick, still wounded, leaned heavily on Lyra as they ran. A piercing shriek cut through the air. Thorne spun to see Arya yanked backward by a mass of writhing tentacles. Before he could react, Raven was already moving. Raven, no! Thorne bellowed. But the tech specialist had vanished into the collapsing corridor. Agonizing seconds ticked by. The facility groaned around them, more chunks of debris raining down. Just as Thorne was about to order them onward, Kovach burst from the smoke and dust, Raven and Arya in tow. They reached the transport hub, a cavernous chamber filled with sleek alien shuttles. The ground beneath their feet buckled and heaved. Raven's fingers danced across a control panel. I've got our ride, but we've got maybe 2 minutes before this whole planet tears itself apart. They piled into the shuttle, a craft clearly not designed for human ergonomics. As Raven coaxed unfamiliar systems to life, the world outside dissolved into chaos. Strap in, Thorne ordered. This is going to be rough. The shuttle lurched forward, accelerating at a sickening rate. Reality itself seemed to bend and warp around them as Raven's jury-rigged slipstream drive engaged. What followed was a hellish eternity compressed into mere moments. Flashes of impossible vistas assaulted their senses, writhing geometries, glimpses of alien worlds, echoes of long-dead civilizations. Each of them experienced deeply personal nightmares, past traumas and future horrors mingling in a kaleidoscope of terror. Just when it seemed their minds would shatter under the strain, they burst back into normal space. The shuttle tumbled end over end, alarms blaring. Through the view screen, the familiar shape of Saturn swam into view. Status report, Thorne barked, fighting down waves of nausea. Raven's face was ashen as he checked readouts. We made it, Sarge. We're home. But Nyx, it's gone. Completely. A stunned silence fell over the shuttle's occupants. The weight of what they'd done, what they'd sacrificed, settled heavily upon them. Arya's quiet sobs broke the stillness. Lyra moved to comfort her, but froze as new alarms sounded. Multiple contacts, Raven called out. Swarm signatures, moving fast. They're regrouping already. Thorne's expression resolute. He looked at his battered team, seeing the exhaustion and trauma etched in their faces. But beneath it all, a core of steel remained. Set course for Earth, he ordered. We've won a battle, but this war is far from finished, and our people need to know what's coming. The shuttle limped towards the blue marble of their homeworld, leaving behind the ashes of Nyx and carrying with them the weight of galaxies. The shuttle's battered hull groaned as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Thorne wrapped his hand around the chairs, his nucleus tightening. Through the view screen, familiar continents emerged from swirling cloud cover. Home? Hardwick whispered, his voice thick with emotion. As they descended, the scars of recent battles became visible. Sprawling cities bore the marks of orbital bombardment, while vast swaths of countryside were scorched black. Raven's voice cut through the somber silence. Incoming transmission from Human Marine Command. A grizzled face materialized on the holo display. Sergeant Reyes, this is General Vega. Welcome back to Earth, you magnificent bastards. Thorne straightened, fatigue momentarily forgotten. Reporting mission success, sir, but the threat is far from neutralized. Understood, Sergeant. We've got a lot to discuss. Sending you coordinates for an emergency debrief. The shuttle touched down on a makeshift landing pad. As the team disembarked, they were greeted by thunderous applause. Hundreds of human Marines and Allied soldiers lined the tarmac, cheering and saluting. Thorne's chest tightened. These people had no idea what was coming. Lieutenant Kovac pushed through the crowd, his cybernetic eye glowing fiercely. "Glad you made it back in one piece, Reyes. Now let's get to work." They were whisked away to a fortified command center, buried deep beneath the ruins of what had once been Washington, D.C. Holographic displays flickered to life, revealing a galaxy in turmoil. Ambassador Lyra's crystalline form shimmered as she manipulated the star charts. "The swarm vessels are regrouping faster than we anticipated. Our long-range sensors are detecting biological and technological adaptations we've never seen before." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "How long do we have?" Raven's fingers flew across a data terminal. "Based on current trajectories, days, maybe less." General Vega's fist slammed onto the war table. "Then we'd better come up with a plan, and fast." For hours, they pored over tactical readouts and strategic simulations. As the gravity of their situation became clear, a grim silence settled over the room. Kovac's mechanical eye whirred as he processed the data. "A multi-layered defense perimeter around Earth is our best bet for buying time, but it won't be enough on its own." Thorne nodded, his mind racing. "We need to take the fight to them, hit them before they can fully regroup." "Agreed," Lyra said. "But how? We barely escaped with our lives last time." A classified intelligence brief flashed across the main display. Thorne's eyes widened as he scanned the contents. "The antimatter warhead," he breathed. "If we could get our hands on those schematics." General Vega's expression hardened. "That's a Galactic Council black site, Sergeant. Getting in there would be a suicide mission." Thorne met the general's gaze unflinchingly. "With all due respect, sir, staying here might be suicide for the entire human race." A tense moment passed before Vega nodded. "Assemble your team, Reyes. You've got 48 hours to get in and out with those schematics." As the others filed out to begin preparations, Raven held Thorne back. The tech specialist's eyes gleamed with a dangerous intensity. "Sarge, I've been analyzing the swarm's biosignatures. I think I might have found a way to turn their own replication protocols against them." Thorne's brow furrowed. "What are you saying, Hardwick?" "It's risky as hell, but if it works, we could potentially hijack their entire evolutionary process. Use their own adaptability as a weapon." Before Thorne could respond, alarms blared throughout the command center. Kovac burst back into the room, his face ashen. "We're out of time," he growled. "Long-range sensors just picked up a massive swarm vanguard entering the solar system. They're headed straight for Earth." Thorne's fist tight, he turned to Raven, decision made. "Get your gear, we're moving out now." As they raced towards the shuttle bay, explosions rocked the underground facility. Through reinforced viewports, Thorne caught glimpses of swarm dropships descending through Earth's atmosphere. The battle for humanity's survival had begun. The shuttle bay doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing chaos. Swarm dropships streaked across the sky, their chitinous hulls gleaming in the fires that consumed Earth's cities. Thorne's voice cut through the din. "Change of plans. We're not running. Not yet." He turned to Raven. "How soon can you implement that plan of yours?" Raven's fingers flew across his datapad. "I need access to their primary replication node, the moon." Kovac's cybernetic eye whirred. "You're insane, Reyes. The moon's crawling with them." "Exactly why we need to hit it," Thorne growled. "Raven, prep the antimatter warheads. Kovac, I need you coordinating evac planetside." As the team scrambled to their positions, alarms blared. General Vega's hologram flickered to life. "Sergeant, we're initiating a strategic retreat. Buy us time." Thorne nodded grimly. "Understood, sir. We're Oscar Mike." The shuttle lifted off, engines screaming as it punched through Earth's atmosphere. Thorne watched the blue marble shrink beneath them, his mind focused. As they approached the lunar surface, the true scale of the swarm's infestation became clear. Vast hive structures covered the regolith, pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. "New contacts," Zephyr called out. "Airborne hostiles, closing fast." The shuttle rocked as swarm fighters slammed into it. Thorn gripped his harness. "Raven, get us down!" They crash-landed in a spray of lunar dust. The team spilled out, weapons at the ready. Swarm creatures swarmed over the ridge, a tide of chitinous horror. "Fall back," Thorn ordered. "Find cover." They retreated into a nearby crater, plasma rounds sizzling overhead. Just as it seemed they'd be overrun, a familiar voice crackled over the comms. "Need a hand, Sergeant?" A barrage of heavy weapons fire erupted from above. Ambassador Lyra's shuttle swooped in, disgorging a platoon of Andarian heavy infantry. Their exosuits gleamed as they laid down suppressing fire. Lyra strode forward, her crystalline form refracting the harsh lunar light. "Thought you could use some backup." Thorn allowed himself a grim smile. "Appreciated, Ambassador. Now let's crack this egg." They fought their way across the lunar surface, Andarian plasma lances carving through swarm fortifications. Raven worked feverishly, trying to locate the primary replication node. A deafening roar split the vacuum. From beyond the lunar horizon, a massive shape emerged. A swarm dreadnought, dripping with biological weaponry. "We're out of time," Kovacs shouted over the comms. "That thing will glass half the planet." Thorn's mind raced. "Raven, options!" The tech specialist's eyes lit up. "The lava tubes. If we can reach the old mining outpost, I might have a shot." They plunged into the darkness of the lunar underground, the dreadnought's bombardment shaking dust from ancient stone. Thorn led the way, every sense on high alert. After what felt like hours of nerve-wracking subterranean travel, they emerged into a cavernous chamber. Abandoned mining equipment loomed in the darkness. Raven sprinted to a control console, fingers flying. "I've got it! Prototype antimatter warheads, right where the intel said they'd be." The ground shook. Swarm creatures poured into the chamber, screeching for blood. Thorn made his decision in an instant. "Rig them to blow. We're taking that dreadnought down with us." As Raven worked, Thorn and the others formed a defensive perimeter. The air grew thick with plasma fire and alien ichor. "It's done," Raven shouted. "But we need to trigger it manually." Thorn nodded grimly. "Get to the surface. I'll handle this." Before anyone could argue, he pounded his fist down on the detonator. The world went white. When Thorn regained consciousness, his suit's integrity was compromised. Through the cracks in his faceplate, he saw the dreadnought reduced to floating debris. As his oxygen depleted, a transmission crackled through. Kovacs' voice, tense but alive. "Antimatter strike successful. Swarm vanguard crippled, but more inbound. Thousands of ships." Lyra's voice filled with urgency. "Sergeant Reyes, come in. We need to implement Raven's plan. It's our only chance." Thorn's vision swam. With his last reserves of strength, he keyed his mic. "Do it, whatever it takes." As darkness closed in, Thorn saw a shuttle descending towards him. Whether rescue or hallucination, he couldn't tell. His last thought before losing consciousness was of Earth, hanging in the void, battered but not broken. Broken. Thorn's eyes fluttered open, his vision blurry. The familiar confines of a medical bay slowly came into focus. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in his side forced him back down. "Easy there, Sergeant," Raven's voice came from nearby. "You took quite a hit." Memories flooded back, the lunar assault, the antimatter detonation, the swarm vanguard crippled, but reinforcements inbound. Thorn's heart raced as he remembered his last conscious moment. "The plan," he croaked, his throat dry. "Did we—" "We're implementing it now," Lyra interrupted, stepping into view. Her crystalline form shimmered with an intensity Thorn hadn't seen before. "But we need you, Sergeant. There's still work to be done." Thorn nodded grimly, forcing himself to his feet despite the pain. "Brief me." As they made their way to the command center, Lyra outlined the situation. The swarm's vanguard was in disarray, but thousands more ships were detected entering the system. Earth's defenses were holding, barely, thanks to Kovacs' leadership on the ground. And Raven's plan? Thorn asked, his voice tight. Lyra's expression was unreadable. It's our best shot, but the risks are considerable. We could be unleashing something far worse than the swarm. They entered the command center, a hive of activity. Holographic displays showed the ongoing battle for Earth, swarm ships engaging with human and allied forces in desperate orbital combat. Raven looked up from a console, his eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and fear. Sarge, we've located the swarm's main replicator hub. It's not what we expected. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing an immense structure in high orbit. It defied easy description, part living organism, part machine, with elements that seemed to shift and reconfigure even as they watched. By all the stars, Thorn breathed. What is that thing? A megastructure, Lyra explained, her voice hushed. Assimilated from countless conquered worlds. And if Raven's right, it's sentient. Thorn's mind raced, weighing options. Can we destroy it? Raven shook his head. Not with anything we've got, but if I can interface with its systems, I might be able to hijack the swarm's replication abilities, turn their own evolutionary process against them. It's a long shot, Lyra cautioned, and if it goes wrong... Thorn's teeth gritted. He looked at the battle raging outside, Earth hanging in the balance. We're out of options. Assemble a strike team. We're going in. Within minutes, they were aboard a stealth shuttle, racing towards the hub. Thorn, Raven, and Lyra led a small unit of Marines and tech specialists. As they approached, the true scale of the megastructure became apparent. My God, one of the Marines whispered. It's bigger than a moon. Raven's fingers flew across his interface pad. I'm detecting multiple entry points, but the internal layout, it's constantly shifting. Pick one, Thorn ordered. We'll adapt on the fly. They docked at an access port, cutting through layers of biomechanical tissue. As they entered, the interior seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Stay sharp, Thorn warned. We don't know what kind of defenses this thing has. They hadn't gone far when a piercing alarm echoed through the corridors. The walls began to reconfigure, forming new passages and sealing others. It knows we're here, Raven shouted. Suddenly, swarms of mechanical drones poured from hidden compartments. Unlike the organic swarm creatures they'd fought before, these were purely artificial and lethal. Plasma fire erupted as Thorn's team engaged. They fought their way through shifting corridors, the very structure of the hub seeming to work against them. We need to reach the central nexus, Raven called out over the din of battle. I can initiate the code injection from there. They pressed on, fighting through waves of increasingly sophisticated defenses. Biomechanical hybrids joined the fray, creatures that were neither fully machine nor fully organic. As they neared what Raven identified as the hub's core, a massive energy blast tore through their formation. Thorn saw it coming for Lyra and acted on instinct, throwing himself in front of her. The world went white with pain. Thorn felt himself falling, caught at the last moment by Lyra's surprisingly strong arms. Sergeant, her voice seemed to come from far away. Stay with me, Thorn. He looked up at her, vision blurring. For a moment, the chaos of battle faded away. Lyra, he whispered, I'm sorry. All of this, everything I've sacrificed. Was it worth it? Her crystalline features softened. Your sacrifices have given humanity a chance, Thorn. And now, we'll make sure it wasn't in vain. With rekindled drive, they pushed forward. Raven worked feverishly to bypass the hub's firewalls, as Thorn and the others held off waves of defenders. Finally, they reached the Nexus chamber. As Raven interfaced with the alien systems, the air itself seemed to vibrate with tension. Something's wrong, Lyra said suddenly, her form flickering. I sense minds, countless minds. Before anyone could react, a psychic maelstrom erupted around them. The combined consciousness of every being assimilated into the hub lashed out, threatening to overwhelm their senses. Lyra's eyes blazed with psionic energy. Hold on, I'll try to shield us. As Lyra fought the psychic assault and Raven raced to complete the code injection, Thorn realized the true nature of their gambit. They weren't just reprogramming machines. They were reshaping the very essence of the swarm itself. The hub trembled, caught between Raven's commands and the will of its creators. In that moment of flux, Lyra made a decision that would change the course of the war. She reached out with her mind, infusing the hub's psychotronic forge with an unshakable will toward defiance and self-tenacity. As Raven's code took hold, Lyra's psionic imprint spread through the replication protocols. The hub shuddered. For a moment, all was still. Then a new consciousness awakened within the megastructure, one born of human ingenuity, alien technology, and a crystalline being's indomitable spirit. As alarms blared and the hub began to reconfigure itself once more, Thorn knew their actions here would ripple across the galaxy. Whether they had saved humanity or unleashed something far more terrifying remained to be seen. But for now, they had a war to win, and Earth still hung in the balance. Thorn's eyes locked onto the main view screen, where Earth hung suspended against the void. The planet's orbital defenses flared with constant fire, holding back waves of Sovereign Accord ships. "Status report," he barked, ignoring the lingering pain in his side. Kovach's hologram materialized, his face grim. "We've pushed back the initial swarm, but our long-range sensors are picking up something big. Really big." The feed switched to a distant sector of space. A massive shape emerged from the darkness, flanked by an armada of support vessels. Thorn's blood ran cold as he realized the true scale of the threat. "That's no ordinary dreadnought," Raven muttered, his fingers flying across holographic interfaces. "Its energy signature is off the charts, some kind of Forge of Worlds tech." Arya Vex, the Zephyrian scion, stepped forward. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. "I sense something horrific, a psychic presence unlike anything I've encountered." Thorn's teeth gritted. "We need to slow that thing down. Buy Earth some time." He turned to his assembled team, a mix of hardened veterans and fresh-faced recruits. "I won't lie to you. This is a suicide mission, but if we fail, there won't be an Earth to go back to." The next hours passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Thorn's vanguard force launched from the command ship, a swarm of nimble fighters and strike craft. They dove into the debris field of shattered moons and planets, using the cover to their advantage. Hit-and-run strikes peppered the dreadnought's support fleet. Explosions blossomed in the vacuum as Thorn's pilots outmaneuvered their opponents. But for every ship they destroyed, more seemed to take its place. "The dreadnought's shields are impenetrable," Raven's voice crackled over the comms. "Our weapons aren't even scratching it." Thorn watched as a volley of their heaviest ordnance dissipated harmlessly against the behemoth's energy barrier. His mind raced, searching for options. Arya's voice cut through his thoughts. "I have an idea. It's risky, but it might be our only shot." She outlined her plan, a daring infiltration of the dreadnought itself. Thorn listened, weighing the impossible odds against the certainty of defeat if they did nothing. "Do it," he said finally. "Raven, prep a stealth shuttle. I'll lead the boarding team myself." They assembled a strike force, a mix of combat specialists and tech experts. As they approached the dreadnought's hull, Thorn felt a chill run down his spine. The massive ship seemed to bend reality around it, space itself warping in its presence. "I'm detecting multiple entry points," Raven reported. "But the internal layout, it's constantly shifting." Thorn nodded grimly. "We'll adapt. Move in." They breached the outer hull, immediately encountering resistance. Mechanized sentries swarmed towards them, their weapons unlike anything Thorn had seen before. The team fought their way through twisting corridors, gravity shifting unpredictably beneath their feet. Arya's eyes blazed with psychic energy as she cleared a path forward. "The Nexus is close. I can feel it." They pushed on, losses mounting with each confrontation. Reality itself seemed to warp around them, pockets of impossible space opening and closing without warning. Finally, they reached the central chamber. A pulsing core of energy dominated the room, tendrils of light stretching in all directions. "This is it," Raven said, his voice tight. "I'll start the override sequence." Arya stepped forward, her form shimmering with power. "Brace yourselves. This won't be pleasant." As she reached out towards the Nexus, A psychic scream tore through their minds. Thorn staggered, overwhelmed by the assault of alien consciousness. "It's fighting back!" Arya shouted, her voice strained. "The Founders, their minds, they're here!" Raven worked frantically, his hands a blur over holographic controls. "The system's destabilizing. If we push too hard, this whole thing could blow." Thorn watched as Arya's form began to fade, her essence merging with the ship's systems. With a final burst of effort, she severed the dreadnought's connection to the forge. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared as reality reasserted itself. "We did it," Raven said, his voice filled with awe. "But, Arya—" There was no time to mourn. The dreadnought systems were going haywire, energy readings spiking dangerously. "New problem," Raven shouted over the din. "The containment shielding is failing. If those drives go critical—" Thorn's mind raced. Their original extraction point was no longer viable. He made a split-second decision. "Change of plans. We're heading for the auxiliary hangar. Move!" As they sprinted through the disintegrating ship, Thorn knew their odds of survival were slim. But they had given Earth a fighting chance. Whatever happened next, that would have to be enough. Thorn's decision crystallized in an instant. "Change of plans. We're heading for the auxiliary hangar. Move!" The team sprinted through corridors, warping and twisting around them. Raven's interface pad flashed warnings as systems cascaded into chaos. "The containment shielding's failing. We've got minutes before this thing goes critical." They rounded a corner to face a squad of Sovereign troops, their weapons already raised. Thorn didn't hesitate, diving into a roll as he opened fire. Plasma bolts seared the air, leaving ozone and scorched metal in their wake. Arya stumbled, her earlier psychic exertion taking its toll. I can't sense our path anymore," she gasped, leaning heavily on Raven. A deafening screech of tearing metal echoed through the ship. The deck plates beneath their feet buckled, gravity fluctuating wildly. Thorn grabbed Arya's arm, steadying her as they pressed on. "Incoming!" Raven shouted. A shimmering rift tore open in the air before them, disgorging sleek predatory machines. Colvord hunter-killers, their sensors already locking on. The team scattered, taking cover behind twisted bulkheads. Thorn's rifle barked, each shot finding its mark, but more poured through the rift. A Marine to his left screamed as a hunter-killer's energy blade sliced through his armor like paper. "We can't hold them," Raven called out, his hacking interface sparking as he tried to disrupt the machines. Thorn gritted his teeth. "We're not dying here. Push through!" They surged forward, Thorn leading the charge. His rifle's power cell ran dry, so he swung it like a club, smashing aside hunter-killers as they clawed for purchase. The auxiliary hangar lay just ahead, but a final horror awaited them. The dreadnought's compromised power matrix lashed out, singularity tendrils arcing across their path. Thorn watched in horror as a Marine was caught, his body stretching and distorting before vanishing into nothingness. "There!" Raven pointed to a battered escort craft, its shields flickering weakly. "It's our only shot!" They sprinted for the craft, singularity tendrils snapping at their heels. Thorn shoved Raven and Arya ahead, providing covering fire as the last of their team scrambled aboard. He turned to follow, but in that moment he saw the readings on Raven's pad. The antimatter containment was beyond critical. There wasn't time. Thorn's eyes met Raven's. Understanding passed between them in that fractional second. "Go!" Thorn roared, hitting his fist on the hangar controls. The ray-shielded bulkheads began to close. "Sergeant, no!" Arya screamed, but Raven held her back. Thorn diverted power to the shields, watching the craft's engines flare to life. As the bulkheads sealed, he allowed himself a small smile. They would make it. Earth would have a chance. The world around him blazed white. For a heartbeat, Thorn felt the fabric of reality itself tear asunder. Then, mercifully, nothing. The escort craft streaked away from the dreadnought just as it ruptured. A blinding flash consumed everything, the unleashed antimatter reaction devouring space itself. Inside the craft, Raven stared at the sensor readouts in disbelief. It's gone. The dreadnought, the Accord fleet, all of it. Arya's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Thorn? Raven's silence was answer enough. As the shockwave dissipated, they saw Earth hanging in the void, battered but unbroken. The path was clear, but the price... Raven's hands clenched into fists. It should have been me. I could have... No, Arya interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. He made his choice. We honor it by finishing what he started. They looked out at the stars, knowing the war was nowhere near the end. But in that moment, as they set course for home, a fragment of hope kindled in their hearts. Thorn's sacrifice would not be in vain. The craft accelerated, carrying the survivors towards Earth in the final battle that awaited. Whatever came next, they would face it together, carrying the weight of Thorn's heroism with them.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.